everyone, welcome to Things Lucy Reads. I'm Luce. This is a reading vlog, technically. My plan was to read 2 seasonal books that day and then vlog about it. That didn't happen. I read the book of Exodus from the Bible and I was expecting it to be as enjoyable as the film The Prince of Egypt, because The Prince of Egypt is based on the book of Exodus. But it was not as enjoyable or as compelling, and it just threw me off for the whole day and then the whole week afterwards. I ended up taking out most of what I'd said about the story of Exodus, because upon reflection and upon talking it over with my dad, who is a theological scholar in addition to being an ordained minister, and it was clear that I just heard something on the audiobook and wildly misinterpreted it. I can tell you that most of those clips were just me complaining about the characterization of God in the Bible. And I feel like even just telling you that that's what I was doing is as funny as me actually doing it. I would have just scrapped this vlog entirely, except I had additional footage from later in the week where I talked about the Ghibli films that I'd been watching. So if you feel like this vlog is not going to be your thing because it's about movies and not books, that's fine. But I thought it was, you know, worthwhile enough to still edit all the way and then to upload. So hopefully it will be enjoyable for you anyway. So let's get into it. It's Easter Sunday, and I've decided that I'm going to get all of my Easter themed reading done today. There were 3 books that I wanted to read, and I remembered that I no longer own one of them. That's Chocolat by Joanne Harris. And the remaining 2 books on my Easter TBR are the book of Exodus from the Bible. It's the story that The Prince of Egypt is based on, and I love that movie. Anyway, I'm going to read that. And then I'm also going to read E. Aster Bunnymund and the Warrior Exit the Earth's Core by William Joyce, which is the second in a book series that ties in with the movie Rise of the Guardians, which I really love. And then obviously this is the Easter themed one. So those are my plans for the day. So my battery died before, that was why the clip suddenly cut out. It's now a few hours later, it's 2:30, and I have read most of Exodus and I will be tapping out at this point. I'm up to chapter 26, but everything for the last like half an hour in the audiobook and for the remaining hour and a half is basically just the interior design requirements of the temple that they're going to build for the Lord. Frankly, I'm not interested. I forgot to mention it in my intro, and the reason I read Exodus today and not whatever the fuck book of the Bible the resurrection is in, I don't even know which one it's in, it's because it's Passover right now. It's Easter Sunday, but we're also in the middle of Passover, and I'm not Jewish, so I don't like celebrate it or observe it or anything. But if a book comes my way set at Passover, I will read it during Passover, and I thought this year I don't have any of those. I will just read source material. That was the reasoning behind that. It feels weird to rate it, but I'm going to give it a 3 stars. And now I will be reading about the Easter Bunny and some warrior eggs, and that sounds like a much better time. So, funny story, it's Wednesday and I haven't finished the bunny book. I think that listening to Exodus put me in a little bit of a slump, just because it completely was not what I expected, and I didn't feel the same emotions after reading it that I feel after watching Prince of Egypt. It just kind of messed with me, and I didn't want to read because I'd been let down, essentially. So what I've been doing for the last few days instead of reading is catching up on my Ghibli watch list. They've all been put up on Netflix, except for Grave of the Fireflies, but all of the others are up there. When I found out that this was happening, I looked at the ones that were like being uploaded each month and realized that if I like didn't count the ones that I'd already seen, I could watch one new one a week, and by the end of April have seen them all. So I've been doing that, and then I did fall behind and I've been catching up for the last 2 days. If you're curious to know, the Ghibli films that I watched were Pom Poko, which I liked. It was okay. It was just missing a spark that made me really like love it. And I have a tally and like whether I've seen it and whether I liked it or not, and I put a little cross for Pompoko. I've got 3. There's either a tick if I liked it, a little wavy line if it was okay but I'm not too sure about it or I want to watch it again later, or like a cross if I'm just like meh. And a cross doesn't necessarily mean, oh, I hated it. It just means like once was enough and I don't want to see it again. Having said that though, I didn't not like Pompoko. It was very cute and I enjoyed the experience of watching it and didn't feel like my time was wasted, but I don't think I'm going to want to watch it again. The other movies that I've put a cross on have been Ocean Waves, because I just thought that that whole relationship was so badly portrayed and toxic, and they didn't communicate and they didn't know each other, and yet they were each other's great love. Really? We can do better than this. And I tweeted and then went back on it. I tweeted that Your Name does everything that Ocean Waves does, but better. And then one of my friends was like, you can't really compare them because Ocean Waves came out in the 80s. And then I chickened out of the whole thing. I'm going to try to articulate this opinion properly, because I ended up deleting that tweet because I feel like that friend thought that when I was comparing them unfavorably, I meant in a visual sense, that I thought that Your Name was better because it was prettier. The animation was more beautiful, that kind of thing, which objectively it is. And I agree that it's unfair to compare a contemporary movie with one that came out 40 years ago, because of course technologies have changed, it's become easier to do certain things. The more visual effects advance, the better they look. But that was not what I meant. What I meant was, despite the fact that both Ocean Waves and Your Name are predominantly about the relationship between the two main characters, they also have in the background this commentary / conversation happening about urban life versus rural life, about modernity versus tradition. And in the process of growing up and figuring out who they are as people and coming into their own, the characters have to decide what parts of the life they've known so far they're going to take with them into the future. What part of both of those things are they going to decide are applicable to them and hold on to, and what parts are they going to cast aside? And I think that Your Name did that better than Ocean Waves, regardless of any visual elements and regardless of the slightly magical element that Your Name has going on, which I feel like everyone knows about already, but which I won't spoil just in case no one has seen that. So I thought that Your Name did this conversation better, and like I said, this conversation and comparison isn't the main point of either film. It just happens to be happening in the background, and the main point of the film is the relationship between the two main characters and how it shapes their lives and ultimately affects their future. And I also feel that the relationship was done better in Your Name than it was done in Ocean Waves, because in Ocean Waves you get told that each of these characters are the other's great love, but they never really talk, and you don't feel like they know each other, and you don't feel like you know them. And I personally just did not buy that relationship at all. They barely spoke. I thought that it was toxic. I didn't understand how it would have worked for longer than 2 weeks. And I also just didn't like either of them or relate to them as people or feel any kind of sympathy or other positive emotion for either of them. But in Your Name, the characters definitely do know each other and they do talk. Unconventionally, but they talk. And at the end, you do feel like it's going to be feasible for them to be together and stay together. So those are the elements that I thought that Your Name did better than Ocean Waves. It was nothing to do with visuals and everything to do with characters and plotline and narrative choices. So even though I deleted the tweet at the time, I stand by the opinion that everything Ocean Waves is trying to do, Your Name also does, but better. If you're thinking about watching that, honestly just watch Your Name. But bring tissues. And then the other one that I didn't like was When Marnie Was There, because you spend the whole movie sitting there going, they're gonna be lesbians, this is a lesbian movie, and then it's this big bullshit no homo reveal, and I'm like, oh. And it's not even the fact that it's a Japanese movie, because apparently it's like that in the book that the movie is based on as well. So you can't even blame Japan for this, because that book was not written by a Japanese person. We've got to deal with our own prejudices. We can't just fob this one off on Asia. Sorry, guys. The movies that I watched after that were Whisper of the Heart, which actually is, it's sort of like a spiritual sequel to Pompoko, in that Pompoko is about the raccoons that are native to the area of the Tama Hills that was, I can't think of the word, urbanized for a section of Tokyo, and how they were trying to fight against the development and make the humans go away. And then Whisper of the Heart takes place in West Tokyo in Tama Hills, which I thought was actually really funny. But it's two different directors. It's the same studio, but two different directors. So it was just funny. Whisper of the Heart is also something of a prequel to The Cat Returns, which I adored. Whisper of the Heart was also really good. I really felt the relationship between the main character and her sister, because it's very much like the relationship that I have with my sister. And I was just sitting there watching the whole time going like, oh God, oh God. Like, almost couldn't watch it because it was too real and too painful, but I got through it, and then it was good and it was really cute, and I don't know, I just liked it. And then the other one that I watched this week was From Up on Poppy Hill, and I adored that, and I'm so glad that it didn't turn out the way that you think it's going to turn out, because I reread The Children of Hurin last week, and I've had about all of the sibling incest that I can take at this point. I need to have a break before I deal with any more. From Up on Poppy Hill didn't go in that direction, thankfully, and it was really cute. And I also think that From Up on Poppy Hill was cast absolutely superbly. Like, everyone's voice was just perfect, and I really, really enjoyed it. And it's funny because I'm watching all of these like contemporary Ghibli movies that I'd never seen before. Like, they were contemporary at the time when they came out. A lot of them now are set in the past, but when they came out, they weren't. It was like modern times. I didn't think that I was going to enjoy all of these ones. I thought that I would only enjoy like the fantasy ones for some reason. And then some of the ones that I've really, really enjoyed have been the, you know, like the regular people ones. Like, I think that Only Yesterday is possibly my, if not my all-time favorite, it's in the top 3 with Spirited Away and Howl's Moving Castle. And I didn't think I was gonna like any of them as much as I like Spirited Away and Howl's Moving Castle. So it's been really nice, and I'm really glad that they are now all on Netflix so that I could do this, because spending $28 on a DVD of a movie that you're not sure you're gonna like is a bit much, even for me. So it's been an experience, and a very enjoyable and educational one. So it's been worthwhile. I don't know if you care, but I'm going to tell you about it anyway. Turns out I never filmed an outro for this video either, so that's all I have for you for this one. If you would like to leave me a comment, feel free to do so, or just leave me an emoji heart in your favorite color so that I know that you were here and that you got to the end. I hope that this was enjoyable, and thank you for sticking with it, and I will see you in my next one. Bye for now.